Hello, everybody. My name is Eddie Wagenseller, and this is my presentation on compensation practices for physicians in the United States. Start things off, I will be covering the learning objectives of my case write-up. Reviewing my research, I learned about the various modes of financial compensation offered for physicians, the pros and cons that each model poses, as well as a solution for the healthcare organizations to implement the correct model. By the end of my presentation, the audience will learn why some compensation models are effective in certain settings and why others are not, as well as an informed overview on how specific compensation models affect physicians differently. So, what exactly is compensation? According to Freed, compensation is the idea that employees receive rewards and incentives for the work that they put forth. This can come in a form of a check or in other ways like bonuses and time off. But in the healthcare industry, these compensation methods vastly differ from each organization. Because of the high demand as well as different fields physicians work in, one certain method to compensate them all would not work. Now, you may be asking, why is adequate compensation needed for physicians? According to Joseph Berger, in 2016, the average medical school graduate left with student debt upwards of 190,000 US dollars. This compensation, as well as allocation of resources, is essential in attracting physicians to healthcare organizations. Through the examination of different compensation models, we'll be able to identify the complexity and inner workings on how physicians get paid. Here, I will be talking about the pressing problems and challenges associated with the case write-up, as well as a detailed overview on the models of physician compensation. The main models of compensation first include the straight salary income. This entails that the physician understands how much they will earn, and depending on that figure, will work at that level. Next, we have the productivity or fee-for-service model. This model identifies productiveness by seeing physicians to take more patients and perform more procedures. Ultimately, this model sees more business for higher compensation. Next, we have the capitation model. This model gives a fixed fee for a specific patient or group of patients. The goal is to give the patient care below their fixed fee. Here, the physician makes money if the total cost of services is less than the total patient's fixed fee. Lastly, we have the revenue minus expenses model. This model works by adding up the revenue made by physicians in said practice and subtracting this from all the total overhead expenses. So understanding these models, we can now analyze how the biggest challenge when addressing physician compensation doesn't lie within the models themselves, but within the institutions and organizations that they utilize. There is no right or wrong model of compensation, but each model can be optimized extremely well within certain organizations, but fail in others. This can best be visualized within the pay for performance or productivity model. This model is widely used by healthcare organizations throughout the nation. Here, organizations pay their physicians by their ability to aid and resolve health issues. The problem here is that establishing a standard for health issues is near impossible. A physician that specializes in acute care, such as minor trauma, will be able to have a high success rate in aiding their patients. Higher success in hand equals higher pay. This is extremely unfair to other physicians who choose to specialize in more complex health issues, such as cancer or hereditary problems. These physicians are taking the risk to deal with more pressing health issues, but in return are not adequately compensated for their work. Dr. Brodsky puts it in this way: linking physicians' pay for their ability to manage patients with disease and risk factors that physicians have no control over is foolish. When looking at a health organization such as Kaiser, we see that they chose to pay their physicians using the capitation method. This is not the same for the physicians working with the associated medical groups under Kaiser. The difference in methods of pay poses the underlying issue of physician compensation: pay inequality. Understanding that issues within physician compensation lie within the organization that utilizes them and not the models themselves, we can address how private practices to large-scale organizations can optimize productivity and efficiency using certain compensation models. Looking at small-scale operations such as private or joint practices first, we know that there is a limited number of physicians in practice, and these practices specialize in a certain area of health. Because of this, the revenue minus expenses model would prove most efficient. This model allows growth of the business while at the same time keeping the physicians in check to provide the best service to their patients, successfully optimizing productivity for both the business and the patient. When looking at the large-scale corporations, though, such as chain hospitals, we have to first look at the diversification between physicians. For organizations of cancer, pediatric, and trauma wards combined with acute and general care, management will have to closely analyze all pertinent data. For example, Seeing that the acute care specialists are having fast turnaround times, but physicians in the cancer ward are not even close to having the same time, we know that one compensation method will not be sufficient for both pay. The key here is to find which model will provide optimal productivity and efficiency. Management would likely use a straight salary compensation method when compensating physicians in the cancer or trauma wards. Understanding that here success might not be always an option in the circumstance, using the fee for service model would prove very detrimental to their pay. Having management that observes the variations between their working physicians and using the model of compensation that provides optimal efficiency and productivity, healthcare organizations can minimize the gap of pay inequality between physicians. So, in conclusion, compensation is present in every field of work, but it is vastly more complicated in the world of healthcare. Because of the ever-changing world of healthcare, there are now new emerging models of physician compensation. I believe that through the fallacies of the current models we see today, some of these new models will become the norm, especially with the healthcare worker shortage caused by the current COVID pandemic. The end goal of any physician compensation model is to maximize efficiency and productivity, at the same time providing adequate pay to the physician while keeping unnecessary financial burdens to the organization at a minimum. With the vast variation of physician specialization, combined with the multiple healthcare settings physicians reside in, we now have a better understanding on why certain compensation models are effective and others are not, as well as how specific models benefit physicians differently. This will finally conclude my presentation. Have a great day.